To escape from this insane attraction, Hey, everybody, this is Professor Winston at John Jay College, Radio568.com. I'm here with the Self-Meaning Society class this semester. This is spring 2015. As in past semesters, we talk media, and for this project number 2, we're going to be talking about a couple of different things that are related. The first team put together a podcast here. We'll meet them in a second. They are going to introduce themselves in their podcast. But they put together a commentary on media's representation and reflection of terrorism and how that affects our attitudes towards Muslims as terrorists. And we're going to hear their podcast, and then I am going to bring them online, and we're going to talk live a little more about this idea of mediated terrorism. And so Christy's at the mixer, and she's going to start the podcast right now.
Hi, I'm Nicole, and my major is criminal justice.
Hello, my name is Samantha, and my major is forensic psychology.
Hello, my name is Dan, and my major is police studies.
Okay, so today we wanted to discuss how terrorism is mediated based on a stereotype on being Muslim. And according to mass media terrorism is justified as a crime, not on violence as a political statement. It sends out a message, just like a form of communication. And in relation to this, we wanted to discuss the recent Chapel Hill shootings in North Carolina, which involved a white man shooting 3 Muslim students. So as a hypothetical story, we wanted to kind of flip it and say, what if it was a Muslim man who shot 3 white students? How would the wording in mass media different? Would it be considered terrorism? What are your thoughts?
That if it were worded like that, if a white man were to commit the crime, it would be more as a hate crime because it's against a certain demographic, but it wouldn't be as an act of terrorism as the Chapel Hill shootings as shown. But if a Muslim man were to commit the crime, of course against a certain demographic of, let's say, white woman, it would probably be known as an act of terrorism because terrorism is a mass-mediated term that stereotypes this action on Muslim Middle Eastern men when the act of terrorism itself is an act of violence against, a certain demographic. That's how I would view it.
CNN's The Muslims Are Coming article, they say that the more misleading stories that the media portrays on Muslims, it creates more of an atmosphere that demonizes the Muslims, fueling anti-Muslim narratives and fueling the anti-Muslim ideology to the rest of the world. Most of the people that listen and watch the news just believe what the media is saying, and they don't really question it. So they are going to believe these demonizing stories.
Yeah, exactly. And basically all these actions that are being portrayed in the media, all these stereotypes, I'm trying to relate this to a different article that I've also read on terrorism as a stereotype back in 2006. The author, I'd like to relate that to another article that I've read back in 2006 by Clark Kent Irvin of the New York Times, which claims that these stereotypes of Muslims and their acts of terrorism basically is an illogical and politically incorrect, pungent statement based on morals. And on terrorism itself, it's a very broad act. It's not just a demographic act, but it's one that's portrayed by multiple demographics, races, and ethnicities, and it shouldn't just be based off of one stereotype that's portrayed by the mass media, which alters our thought into thinking that, once a Muslim man commits a crime of terrorism, it's automatically terrorism, as compared to a white man who commits the same act, it's just a hate crime, or as in the Chapel Hill shootings, an act out of anger because he dislikes the way that certain people park their cars. So basically, this whole thing itself is just stands based off of morals and subconscious thoughts that are mediated to us in the media.
I agree. I think that mass media, newspapers, television, news shows, they all direct acts of terrorism to the Muslim and Arab community, and it makes other people of other races believe that terrorism is a Muslim act, like it's a Muslim action, when acts of terrorism can be committed by people other than Muslims and Arabs.
Yes, and I think the media, they are dividing something for us right now, and people who receive the message, they will receive it without thinking, because the media, they are or they were the credible media, so the people, they will believe what the media says, and what are they dividing. So we can see the Muslim always associate with terrorists or terrorism on the news or on Google when you search Muslim. So I think the media, they're just helping us to building the thought.
Now that I'm thinking about this more, I was thinking, how about if these crimes were reflected in Middle Eastern countries? Would these crimes be considered acts of terrorism? Or how about invading Middle Eastern countries, as in American invasions or European conflicts being within these countries for oil? Are those considered acts of terrorism in Middle Eastern countries, as opposed to actions such as the Chapel Hill shooting would be as an act of terrorism in the Middle East too?
Another point I wanted to bring up is how people always associate Muslim communities with people from the Middle East, where when the Muslim community could be people of any race or any background ethnically.
Comparing that with other religions such as Christianity, it's not specifically one race where people would say, oh, Roman Catholics are from Europe. Christianity itself is a very broad religion. It's spanning of many different cultural and ethnic backgrounds. Comparing that with other religions such as Christianity, it's a very broad ethnic and cultural background with many different types of demographics, being a stereotypical white middle-class American citizen. It goes off different races, different ethnicities, and it should just be stereotyped as it is in the Muslim community. It's very broad. All religions within themselves are extremely broad. You don't have to fit a certain demographic. It's all within this so-called spirit that you have to believe in.
I agree, there are Muslims all over the world, not just in the Middle East. So people shouldn't just be ignorant to think that, Middle Eastern people are the only ones that are Muslims. But that's our podcast on how terrorism is portrayed in the media. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. We're back in the studio here. We're in the English department now in 7.65.26. If anyone wants to come by and visit us at Radio 568, that's where we are broadcasting now. We had been in the Communication Theater Arts department, and now we're here. I have at the table here the team that created that podcast, and I am going to ask them to introduce themselves and let us know what your major is. And if you know anyone who's listening, you can give a shout out. I know I asked my son Harrison to listen, so I'm going to give a shout out to my son. And let's start with Zen, and then we'll move around the table.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zen, and I'm a police study major.
Hi, my name is Samantha, and I'm a forensic psychology major.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I'm a political science major.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'm a criminal justice major.
Great, thank you. So we talked here in this podcast about terrorism, and I'm really interested, there is terrorism out there, but I'm interested in how terrorism is mediated and what happens when the word terrorism is thrown out there in the media. I wonder if there's anything that you'd like to say. Where should we start with this? Because you said a lot. Was there anything that you would have liked to add it to the podcast that didn't get in? No? What happens to the word terrorism when it's put out over the media? And we can start anywhere.
So,
this is Samantha.
Yes. So I didn't mention a CNN video that I watched that addressed the Chapel Hill shooting itself, and it was a testimony by the friends of the victims, and his name is Mo, and excuse me, I forget his last name.
These are the friends of the girls that were killed.
And the husband, yes, and
Oh, and there was a husband that was killed too.
yeah, husband and wife, and then another person, and his I don't know, I cannot pronounce his last name, but I know his first name is Mo, and he claims that the man who did these crimes, quoted by him, it wasn't premeditated, and because of the parking, it was because of Yusor Abu Salah hijab wearing, and
So the girls were wearing hijabs,
yes.
right?
And he believes, based on what he's seen personally, that that was the reason why he committed the crime, because he didn't like them wearing hijabs, and it made him feel, I guess, uncomfortable. I guess because of how, of course, being back to how terrorism is mediated, you know. It's
So,
to-
yeah. So when a white man kills a woman in a hijab, it's a hate crime.
Exactly.
It's not terrorism.
Even though it technically is, because hate crimes, I believe, in this instance, are related to terrorism, especially if they're catered toward a certain demographic.
So how would, I mean, if we look at terrorism that way, how would we define terrorism? Would that mean that all hate crimes, you know, a Ku Klux Klan action against a young black man, is a form of terrorism?
I believe so. Yes,
think
it
so,
is.
too.
And can we think through that? How can we now think of a lynching as terrorism? In the same way that we think of, you know, the bombing of 9/11 as terrorism.
Because they're both not just actions of hate itself, but they're political statements, and they usually stand against a certain group because of their beliefs or culture. And of course, in this instance, with both, you know, lynchings and these attacks in Chapel Hill, they're both catered towards, you know, politics, of course, because of 9/11, mass media terrorism, and the culture itself and what it stands for.
Right. Can we let's go around the table? What about that? As you know, this idea of lynching that was done in the South to a great deal is a terrorist act.
I think lynching is a terrorist act. Like in the South, they would hang a black person, and everybody would just stand around and watch. And it was to, like she said before, it was to make a political statement. Like, if you cross me the wrong way, if you say something, if you even look at me the wrong way, you're gonna get lynched. And it did make a statement because it put fear in black people's hearts.
Okay, and can we relate that to this? I know that, but it's like we're kind of rethinking this idea of terrorism from kind of a different standpoint. We easily see that as hatred. So we see it as bigotry, white bigotry against a race that comes out of slavery and all that. And then we think of terrorism as something that is religiously kind of oriented based on, you know, Islam. And how do we put those two ideas together? Because I sense they're pretty much the same thing.
Well, going further in that, terrorism is also a way to communicate your one's point, and it doesn't need to just be on religion. It could be on racial issues too.
So it's a way of communicating an idea.
Yes.
Or an ideology.
Yeah, it's
or a feeling.
Something that is radical, especially acts of violence are radical within themselves.
Right. A lynching is radical.
Yes.
Very.
Right. So it is a way of communicating an ideology.
Yes.
Right. It's a way of, how about a way of controlling the situation?
Yeah,
I mean, if ISIS is a terrorist group, then, you know, then they are controlling a large number of people, right? And that in itself, that control is terrorism. Zen, throw in your ideas there.
Yes, I think they are controlling people by creating some kind of pressure. Like if you want to disobey me, and I will, I would do something bad for you, like that. So they are trying to using the terrorism thing to making a statement like you have to obey me, or if you want to disobey me, I will do something to you. And that is not something about I will do something for you. It's like I just want to do something to control you. So that is terrorism. But something the media define to terrorism, they are not doing the same thing. maybe they just normal hate crime, but the media still define them to terrorism.
Okay, I want to play a piece by Jack Shaheen, who writes about the Muslim as and how the Muslim is treated in media, mainly in the United States. United States media, film and television, mostly film. And Jack Shaheen he's a scholar, and he thinks about this kind of stuff. And so there's a documentary we're going to look at class next week. But I want to play just a little bit of the beginning of this. And so Christy, if you can play that. And in it, he talks about how the Muslim character in media is treated in a very negative way. So why don't you play that?
Arabs are the most maligned group in the history of Hollywood. They're portrayed basically as subhumans. Untermenschen, a term used by Nazis to vilify gypsies and Jews. These images have been with us for more than a century. For 30 years, I've looked at how we, particularly when I say we, image makers, have projected Arabs on silver screens.
Okay, so there we have Jack Shaheen's depiction of the Arab in the movies, and it seems to me we could also talk about the depiction of other groups in movies, and how we create these ideologies that allow us to hate and to become terrorists, in a sense. I mean, again, we go back to the lynching and all. Any comments about that? About the Muslim as bad?
Yeah, I believe that, especially ever since 9/11, this negative perpetuation has become even worse. Even though, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, when, films like Indiana Jones were released, they always, how am I supposed to say it? The person that was always seen as the bad guy was usually, Middle Eastern descent. And I think since 9/11 occurred, depiction of Muslims as, stereotypical terrorists, have been more prevalent, especially in films. I don't know exact names, but I'm just giving circumstances where the Muslim would be as, act as a suicide bomber, or would act, as...
Or as the raper of women.
Yeah.
As, well, you can think about, Sinbad movies, and we're going to take a look at that next week, and how the Arab is seen as the evil doer, and the nasty person, and the one that is, taking your women and your money and your gold and your oil and whatever. Yeah. And anyone else about that, about the real bad Arab? Real spelling R-E-E-L, as in film reel. Go on.
Well, what I wanted to talk about was how the Arabs are depicted in media and how that affects people's ideology. For example, I remember when I was in the 3rd grade after 9/11, we had a kid in my class who was from Pakistan. And I remember we were walking up the stairs one day to our math class, and one kid on the line in front of him turns around and says, "I need you to get away from me, you stupid terrorist."
Right.
And that was insane to me. Like, I've never heard that before. Like, I've never heard that form.
And where did that idea come from?
It happened right after 9/11, so
I know, but where did this kid get that idea?
Maybe
that this person who looks like this is therefore a terrorist?
From the media.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where else do we get it from?
Exactly.
Yeah. And we get it, and we get it, and we get it. Including Disney. Disney did it too in Aladdin, but that's another conversation.
I wanted to add something else, talking about the instance that you went to. I was on Tumblr actually yesterday, and there's a video of a young Sikh boy. He wasn't Muslim, but he filmed himself being bullied. I think he was around like the 4th or 5th grade, by a bunch of students who were mostly white, and it was on a school bus. He filmed it, and they were calling him terrorist. You're a bad person. You're a terrorist. Oh. And once he was
now we have to point out that this is a Sikh.
Yes,
not Muslim,
but he's of Middle Eastern descent, and he was calling them out on their actions. And of course, as a defense, the other kids who were white were saying, "You can't film us. That's illegal." But he wanted to prove a statement. A boy as young as him, that this is a very big issue, and he's not even Muslim, but he's still being attacked just because he's of Middle Eastern descent, and it fits into your demographic.
I wanted to comment on what Nicole said about how when she was in 3rd grade, how you said there was a student, he was of Pakistani descent.
Yeah.
I think that it's not only the media, like it is the media that's kind of like the foundation, but it could have been the parents also, because during after 9/11, Bin Laden's face was all over the news all the time. So if you see that, it's kind of like a brainwashing thing. Like, if I see this all the time, I'm gonna think that, he's dressed like that, and they're bad. Those are bad people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So so you're gonna tell your children, like, well, they're bad people. Stay away from them. So of course, in third grade, you're 10, 11 years old. You're not gonna think anything but they're bad. They're horrible.
And Bin Laden, in fact, I would say was cooperating with that image because he wanted to put that image out on the media, that image of a dangerous Muslim, dangerous Islam, right?
Yes.
And so he presented himself that way. And in fact, he could have presented himself in any number of ways. He could have been in a suit, but he wore a costume
Right.
that presented himself as the image of terrorism that the Western media has been using and using and using and using. And he used it for his own means, for his own purposes. I want to talk about one other thing. What about American impact on military impact on Muslim countries? Maybe Zen could talk about this because you are in the Marine Reserves. But what about the fact that how are we looked at? Are Americans, is it possible that Americans are seen as terrorists?
I don't think so, because the terrorism always relate to politic recruitment. Like ISIS, they execute the hostage because they want the other country's government to release their person. So if you are doing something for justice or some other recruitment, it's not something like a political. I think that we cannot say that is terrorism.
So our incursion into Arabian countries is not political. It's all altruistic. It's all to help the other person. I wonder if anyone else has any ideas about that.
Because we have, we always have reason to help people, and if we want to use our armed forces, we have to go through by the house.
Right.
They voted, so that is something about right and justice and reasonable. It's not just for, hey, you have to release our member. So if you don't do that, I will kill some hostage. That is terrorism.
Right. Just real quick, and anyone have any opinion of that? This is a whole other discussion about how our military is also mediated. Our ideas about the military, who we are as a military, our positive feelings towards soldiers. Not saying we shouldn't have those positive feelings, but they are created. They're created. We're inducted with it. And I wonder, anyone have something you want to say?
Yeah, I was thinking, not just, about the whole entire thing itself, but how terrorism could be seen as an act of, violence or whatever. I can't put my words straight on this, but terrorism is seen as. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
No, we're just mixing in some music here because we're coming to the end of the segment. But finish up your idea.
But terrorism can be seen as perpetrated by the United States and Middle Eastern countries, especially since it could be a skewed viewpoint by other organizations such as ISIS or the Taliban. And it depends. Depends on who's perpetrating that we are the bad people. Because as Zen was talking about earlier, how we're going there for a positive reason. Of course, it could be taken differently and could be, messed up and skewed by certain organizations that are pretty much against the United States' interest.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, anything could be mediated and changed around. This is a wonderful discussion. Thank you. And I'm going to bring in the next group, but I think I thought you brought out some newer ideas now that I'm glad we had this kind of live broadcast. I'm going to ask Christy to turn off all the mics but mine as we move to our next group. And basically, the next group is going to be also talking about media and how media affects how certain words are seen and felt, and how we give meanings to words. But basically, we get those meanings through media, especially today. And so, Christy, bring up some background music, and we'll bring in the next group. Okay, we're back. Our next team has just entered the studio here at 7.65.26 in the English department in the new building at John Jay College. We have no name for this building. We just call it the new. So we're in the new, and I'm going to play this other podcast for you in which the students from the Self-Meaning Society class are discussing how words are mediated, and here we go.
My major is undeclared currently.
My name is Victor Ayala, and in the coming weeks, my major will be economics.
My name is Christy Loveras, and my major is forensic psychology.
Okay, and with all the members of this group introduced, let's get onto our topic, words. The way that media empowers these words by attacking those who use them in public, and how they give them new meaning. Words of power. These words that in this politically correct world that we live in, we have come to avoid using. Words that the news media can't wait to hear the next use of. They attack anyone who dares to use them, and criticizes those who avoid them, all for the sake of a sensational story that will make a quick buck. Today we will be discussing these words that have grown beyond their basic usage, the words that through the media carry the weight of an attack as painful as any punch or kick. I would like to start off this topic with the most basic and well-known of these words, the vulgar, dirty, bad words, whatever you use to describe those words that we, as a society, have unofficially agreed to forbid speaking out loud. The words that the late comedian George Carlin has dubbed the 7 words you can't say on TV. Now, I would love to play this entire thing uncensored, but considering the last time that happened, the FCC officially banned these words on air, so I prefer to avoid the risk. These words that we have unofficially established as taboo, the same words that the news media secretly revels whenever uttered in public. Think about it. Just hours after that live award show or talk show where celebrity, some person in public, utters one of these words, you get countless of news articles all focused on the word and bashing the celebrity. Take this report from On the Media, where TV critic Glenn Garvin talks about Jane Fonda when she used one of these words.
Even a jaded old TV critic like myself was somewhat startled when Jane Fonda, discussing her appearance in a play called The Vagina Monologues, used another word for vagina that starts with a C.
Well, it wasn't that I wasn't a big fan. I hadn't seen the play. I live in Georgia, okay? I was asked to do a monologue. And I said, I don't think so. I got enough problems.
20, 25 years ago, the sky would have fallen. The network would have been burned to the ground, probably. Instead, they just apologized, and so far, at least, that's been the end of it.
Well, why is it we give incidents like this attention? Why is it that whenever something like this happens, someone has to issue a public apology, or else, as Garvin put it, the network would have to be burned to the ground? It's because the media loves to blow up these stories. They're the first to jump on the bandwagon and attack these celebrities, knowing how quickly the public will eat their stories up. In doing so, the news media has taken these words that, while considered just in bad taste, nothing more, they have taken them into words that people must be crucified for saying. And now I would like to pass the mic to Victor and his piece on a word that has somehow grown to become a single-handed attack on an entire race.
Speaking of curse words, one in particular comes into mind when it comes to the media, and that is the N-word. I will not actually say the word because even in radio you can't really, it's not recommended to say it. But it has its origins, and the media loves to use the word because it's so easy to make money off of it. And the specific example is North Valley High School in Kentucky. A teacher said to a student the N-word, and there was the student himself, he was an honor roll student. He was trying to get the teacher fired for saying the N-word to him. But from what the teacher says, that he said it first, and that he was just reciprocating the word to him, and that he was taught in school to repeat words back to his students. And then the board of directors at the school said they did not teach him that. And then he ended up getting 10 days of suspension and diversity training. What the news did was they kept it going, and then the Boondocks took that whole case and made it sort of their own. And in the show, Riley is the student, and it's just the way they portrayed it. It was like almost exactly like concrete, the same. Like it was literally, if you would watch like the whole broadcast for the actual event, and then the Boondocks show, it's like congruent completely. And then I would roll.
Now I'm gonna talk about the word gay because it's clear that
people refer to being gay as wrong simply because it goes against the norms that the media within our society has set for us. We're taught that we're supposed to be attracted to people of the opposite sex from every episode of a show or movie. The couples are all heterosexual. Over time, the inclusion of homosexuals in films has increased in many cases, but you can still see the negative depiction. Like, for example, before it used to only be heterosexual couples, and now you include a homosexual couple here and there, but it's still rare. For example, in the show that I watched that's called Scandal, one of the characters is a gay man, and it's seen as wrong. He has to keep it a secret. He does whatever he can in his power so that nobody finds out. And that's, oftentimes hard because he wants to get married and he can't. Many comments that many show make, such as "that's so gay," are passed down to the viewers, which then becomes the norm in our vocabulary. I hear way too often people referring to things as, "oh, that's gay," which has a negative connotation to it. I think that gay marriage is something that should be between a man and a woman. Is a quote that Arnold Schwarzenegger once said, which basically means that he does not believe in homosexuality. He thinks that everybody should be heterosexual. And that's honestly what's been depicted in all these shows and movies throughout times. And although it's reaching towards equality, it's not even close to getting there.
See, I would like to talk about something that derives differently from all the words that you're talking about. My topic was on the semantics of terrorism and how media misconstrues words and uses words differently in order to commercialize things. One of the examples here is President Obama. When he talks about ISIS and the ISIS problem, he doesn't use the words jihadist or Islamic in any of his speeches. And the reason for this is he doesn't want to give power to this organization by giving them these names. Because if he does, then they are justified in what they are doing. Unfortunately speaking, American media sees it differently. He takes fire from both left and right sides, saying that, oh, how can you fight an enemy that you physically do not wish to name? But that is not the case, because ISIS is not Islam, and ISIS is not a jihad movement. But media wants that thing. They want to label it. They want that umbrella term. It's these words that they use to commercialize things that they want and makes the product easier to sell and push to people. That in and of itself is a negative, because not every incident that happens where, there was an incident where a soldier shot up a field base and they called it a jihadist attack. It was probably just one man and, he snapped. But we label it as such because the public wants it to be. They want that. Media wants to push this product because that's what it is. Terrorism is now a product to be used by people. And it is media that gives power to these words, not people. It is these things physically and emotionally.
And we're back. I'm playing the Muslim music in the background, Islam music, because it seems like in some ways that's the theme that we're dealing with in this broadcast of Radio 568 of the Self-Meeting Society class here at John Jay College, in which, again, we study all things related to media. And this group here was talking about a very important aspect, how media establishes meaning to words, gives power to words, phrases, and how then dominant groups then use those phrases and words in order to remain in dominance. Or at least that's the way I look at it. We're going to go around the room and we're going to introduce each other. We'll start with Juan, and what's your major? And if you have any shout out to anyone that you'd like to, that you know is listening. Wait.
Okay.
Okay, you can go now.
Okay, my name is Juan. My major's in forensic science. I thought I should introduce myself first since I was the first to go, and from what I've heard, I didn't get a proper introduction to that podcast.
No, I'm sorry about that. I'm kind of running everything here. We need a dedicated techie so that everything gets there. But I knew you were going to introduce yourself, so I just went ahead with it.
All right.
I apologize.
It's fine.
My name is Joe. My major is currently undeclared.
Hello, my name is Victor Ayala, and my major in the upcoming week is going to be economics. I would like to make a shout out to Mac Miller. His new mixtape was amazing. I hope he's watching this.
Did you ask him to?
He didn't respond to my email.
Oh well. Oh well.
He didn't respond to my tweets.
Was it you or was it him?
No, I sent it to him, but he doesn't respond to any email.
Okay. All right. Okay. And last but not least, our technician on the last segment.
Hi, my name is Christy Loveras, and my major is forensic psychology.
Great. And anyone you know that's listening?
I hope my friend Genesis that I told.
Okay. Well, shout out to Genesis. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Chrissy did a great job on the last segment, mixing everything up. Or mixing the sounds together. It was the first time she did it, and she took to it like a duck to water, so to speak. So where should we begin? Words are powerful. Mediated words are powerful. Maybe we can start with gay.
All right.
Gay as a word. Now, Chrissy talked about gay as being a negative connotation. I don't know that we really started that idea from media, did we? Was the idea of gay, is that a mediated word, and how far back does it go? Does anyone have anything else to say about the word, the use of the word gay in media or otherwise, and the power of the word gay?
I have something to say.
Go ahead, yes.
I feel like as males...
This is Victor.
As males, I feel like we brought it upon ourselves to make it a really bad term. Because I can't see the media saying it as a bad thing. Only just same-gender marriage is a problem, which it really isn't. But I see it more as a male, like a male thing. We kind of brought it up. We see it as a nasty, wrong thing when it's really just a choice.
Okay, but you're talking now about the behavior, the homosexual behavior, as being seen in certain groups of this country as being a negative type of behavior. But what about how words get meaning? How does the word gay become, does anyone know the background of the word gay and how it got the negative connotation?
I can say for a man to call someone else, to a man to call another man gay, the man saying it would feel superior in a sense where for me to have a woman is better than me having a man.
So is the word gay, let me see if I can get anything going here, has the word gay always been seen as negative? Is it seen as negative today as it was in the past?
No, actually, the word gay, originally it means, and when you look it up in the dictionary, it means happy or jubilant.
Yeah, really does.
Right.
When something is gay, it's, happy. So I don't understand, the negative connotation that was brought to the word through, use in public places or people using it as an insult. I don't see the correlation. Shouldn't they be happy?
Yeah, but it's not seen that way. Or in the past, the word gay has not been seen as a word that has positive connotations. And Christy kind of, brought up as saying that's so gay. I assume that when you say that, you're thinking homosexual behavior, and that behavior is it's not appropriate, or there's something not good about it.
As someone who games a lot, and I hear the term a lot, it's not that something is homosexual, or that's not what the insult's for. The insult, that's gay. It's just words. Individual people give power to these words, but at the end of the day, they're just words.
Of course they are. I think that's the takeaway. They're just words, but we feel them differently. And at one time, if you were seen as gay, you tried to avoid that. Not so much anymore. There are other words that refer to the homosexual activities and behavior. I mean, they're just words, but they have power to them. I mean, there are other words that are even worse than gay in reference to homosexual,
But is it
people.
really in reference to homosexuals?
All right, then what is it in reference to?
It's in
I think you're
reference
right.
to nothing.
I mean, it's not our fault. We were growing up into a society where we learned that the words are given a negative effect. If we were more informed about the word itself rather than the media's version of the word, it'd be different. But we were growing up into that society.
We were talking. This reminds me. We saw a video earlier with was it Richard Wright? Who was it that we saw? And he was talking about the N-word, which we can get to that. And he said that's not me.
Oh, the guy in Europe. I think he was in Europe.
Yeah. Who was that? Wasn't Richard Wright? Who was it? It was a writer. His name is not coming to me. But he said that the N-word, and I'm not going to say the N-word because I might get in trouble. So, but he used the word, and he said, that's not me, man. That's not who I am. But whoever is using it in a negative way, that's who you are. I don't know if there's any comments on that, because we really didn't get to that in the class. This idea that the negative connotation of the word does not reside in the homosexual man. It resides in the person who's throwing the word at the homosexual man. That it's not within that person. It's not within the black man to be called the N-word. It's within the bigot who's using the word. That's where the negativity resides.
That sounds like I'm rubber and you're glue. It just bounces off and goes back to you.
Is that all it is?
I mean,
is it as innocent as that?
Basic model.
Because the person giving the power to the word is the one using it. If you go out and you actively say, "Oh, that's gay," or you are physically saying that I feel that this is wrong. You are giving power to that word, but that object or that person, they don't need to give power to that word at all.
They don't have to accept the power.
They don't have to accept anything that I say.
So in that case, it is like rubber and glue. It's like if I become glue, then I get bothered by it. But if I say this has nothing to do with me, this is something just because you're saying it at me doesn't relate to me, because it's not me at all.
Yeah, it's worthless.
It's as far as my self-identity, it means nothing.
So how about the people that actually are homosexual and they're gonna feel some type of way about it?
Well, I think the point. Well, what about that?
Well, that's not necessarily true. Like one of the members of my raid team is gay, and he actively says that's really gay, or he calls people out on stuff, and he uses other derogatory terms for homosexuals. But I mean, he's still a homosexual.
There's some people who take offense, and there's some people who just don't care.
Let's take it a step further and get over to what Joe was talking about, and that is the incorporation of a word, the taking over of a word by a group that at first was negative, but then by owning it, you can change the meaning. So where gay may have been a negative word, I was going to go to you, Joe.
Right. Are you going to me?
Right, but let me just say something because I wasn't making a connection here. Is that by owning the word, a group can actually empower the word rather than and make it positive rather than negative. Now, I'm thinking of the word Obamacare. Obamacare was used by the Republicans for a long time as a negative connotated word about the health care bill. But then the Democrats took it over. And I know you were talking about Obama, and I wonder if you have anything to say about that. I may be throwing you a curveball here.
Minor curveball, but not much. Well, yes. In the media, they interpreted the Obamacare because Republicans were pushing it. And if you tune into Fox News, the most conservative newscast of all, you'll find that they were smashing it. They were slamming Obamacare up against the wall and just having their way with it. The reason for this is because they thought it was bad, standardized health care for all. But from a Democratic standpoint, you see that it's the correct thing to do. Obamacare became like, oh, Obama does care about people.
Right. They took the word and they incorporated it in their own language, in their own mediated language, and controlled the meaning where before the Republicans were controlling it.
Yeah, the Republicans were controlling media and they were slamming it as a negative. It's like, oh, we're going to do all this stuff and it's just bad for American economy and it's bad for the people of America.
It's a socialist kind of act. I mean,
Oh no, let's not debate Obamacare. We're talking words,
Okay.
and how words have power, and how they can have negative power for a group, but if that group takes it over, they can. I think the N-word was like that. The N-word had negative power, but then was taken over by African Americans as a positive thing. You know, here's my N, as this is my friend. So it became a positive. So it was turning it around. Yeah. We're just about at the end of the class. I'm going to switch over here to a little piece that comes out of House of Cards, in which the nasty politician, the Machiavellian politician, takes an instance, takes a word and a phrase and makes it work for himself, and then hands it over to the media and destroys the teachers union through a phrase, disorganized labor. I thank the group here from Self Media and Society, and we're going to go out on this little piece from House of Cards.
More school books, less bricks. No, it's too broad. We need a better soundbite, something specific, something that points the finger directly at Spinella.
He'll deny any involvement.
Well, of course he will. So how do we get around that?
We say he can't control his troops.
There's no evidence it was a teacher.
Who else could it be?
Look, he's going to shift blame for the strike back on Congress. No, we need something clear, something clean, something that sticks in your head.
Teachers need a lesson in self-restraint.
No, you're not hearing me. People like teachers. No, we need something that makes Spinella the villain. His lack of control, his inability.
Disorganized labor.
It's disorganized labor, plain and simple. When you've got angry teachers throwing bricks through congressmen's windows, you've got to blame the union leadership.
We'll be beefing up the security for the entire leadership, and I strongly encourage Marty Spinella to keep his people in line. This is starting to look like disorganized labor.
Do you really think Marty Spinella is to blame?
Whether Mr. Spinella is behind this or not, he might want to tone down the rhetoric before disorganized labor turns into organized crime.
No one can prove anything, so that's the most cogent